Okay, I think we might get started. So, welcome. It is really great to see you all here today. I'm Jane Cassidy. I'm the immediate past president of the immediate past national president of the Australian Institute of Architects, and it is really my great pleasure again to host the Australian Zero Carbon Housing Challenge. It's a really key action under the Australian Institute of Architects Decarbonisation Plan, and this initiative is all about what architects around Australia can do to lower our residential carbon footprint. This is a recorded event, so please ensure that your microphone and your phone are on silent. Next slide, please. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we're meeting on, and for me, that's the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples here in Canberra, and to those elsewhere around the country. I respect their continuing culture and the contribution that they make to our nation. And I'd also like to acknowledge and welcome Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who might be attending the event tonight. This is an event where everyone's identity is respected, and the Institute seeks to foster respectful dialogue, shared knowledge, and to acknowledge diverse experiences. Next slide. I'd like to also welcome our guests who join me today, the Australian Institute of Architects National President, Adam Haddow, and architects Sarah Lebner of QE Architecture and Patrick Kelly of Breathe. I'd also like to welcome the Zero Carbon Challenge volunteers and an absolute driving force behind the challenge over the last few years. So Dr. Melinda Dodson and Rob Henry, they're both past ACT chapter presidents, and Melinda is a past national president and Rob is a past Imagine president. This is the third challenge round, and so I'd like to really welcome Chris de Jocelyn, the CEO of Cerclos, and his team, particularly Faye and Laura, who have really worked hard to scale the challenge nationally through their whole of life cycle carbon software, Rapid LCA. As a volunteer initiative, it's been really heartening to see so many generous supporters and sponsors come on board to make the challenge possible. And because we're all volunteers, it means that the funds are going directly to whole of life cycle tools and training, which is really important, and activities that really showcase low to net zero carbon residential designs by architects. The format for today is that we're going to begin with the decarbonisation big picture, the challenge and a demo of Rapid LCA. We're then going to move to a panel discussion and a Q&A on how you design for reduced residential carbon. And then we're going to wrap up with a recap on the challenge and the key dates. I would now like to introduce the National President, Adam Haddow. He's a partner at SJB, and Adam is really interested in what makes cities vibrant, connected and civic, with particular expertise in urban density, as well as multi-use residential and the intersection of public and private space. He's been recognised with numerous awards. He's a Churchill Fellow and has examined the state of modern density living in Australia. So, Adam, over to you.
G'day, Jane. Nice, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. It's amazing to see you all here. Although I don't get to see faces, I'm just seeing names. But it's very nice to see you all here. An amazing opportunity, I think, for us all to come together and really challenge some of the really critical things that we need to deal with in this country at this point in time. If you've heard me talk at the Institute before, you will know that I bang on about two major issues. Sustainability being the greatest challenge of our time, and housing being one of the defining issues of our generation. And really those two things together are really what drive me, at least in terms of our engagement with the Institute, to try and achieve a better outcome, not only for our profession, for the architects, but for our society, who I really think is what the Institute's there for to do, is to represent our members and help drive a better outcome in our communities. Obviously, this is a really housing is a major contributor to Australia's carbon footprint. Really, if we're going to look at transitioning to net zero, we have to both look at the operational and upfront carbon. The housing component is critical. I think I was at another event today, and I think 33% of our carbon footprint comes from construction, and 7% of that is in the construction of the dwellings, and the remainder 25% or something is sitting in our operational. So it's really important that we look at this. We're really trying at the Institute to champion the transition to net zero. We're working on a couple of things. We're working to progressively educate low carbon as being a characteristic of good design. So talking frequently to community and government around what good design is. Because we want to make sure that good design is at the very heart of thriving communities. We want to look towards driving a transparent and consistent, driving transparency and consistency in carbon benchmarking. So this is really what this project is about, to try and see whether we can establish some benchmarks to enable us to better advocate. And right now you can look at, you can access the Institute's embodied carbon curriculum and toolkit via the website. So I really encourage you to do that. We also last year at the national conference launched the industry decarbonisation plan. That's a mouthful. Which is a really great document. I actually have a copy of it here because I was reading it again today. Sorry, it's a bit blurry. Reading it again today to really understand the parameters that we're trying to set the profession and the industry up within. So I really encourage you to download and have a look at that as well. And obviously, feedback is excellent. We love feedback. So give us feedback if there's something that you think is good or bad or otherwise. So next slide, where the Australian Zero Carbon Housing Challenge is really the key decarbonisation plan deliverable within the Institute's National Sustainability and Climate Action Committee. I really want to thank the people on that committee. It's a really progressive committee who have committed a lot of time and really doing amazing things. So I want to thank the committee, and in particular the people who are helping organise this today. In part of our annual reporting, we're looking to try and ensure that we provide tools and training to architects to help design for life cycle carbon reduction. We want to recognise and promote the low to net zero residential design opportunities. So this challenge looks at housing across the spectrum. So it does include also the missing middle, so which really shows how we can look at scaling housing outcomes for the community. So it is really important that we try to get a good variety of housing in this challenge, and we will be banging on about this over this entire period of doing the challenge. So it'll be featuring heavily in some of my walk and talks. So at the moment, to date, in the challenges that we've done in the past, we've been able to achieve an average carbon saving of about 450 tonnes per resident, and that's measured using the rapid LCA. But there's more that we need to do with that. So given the quantum of housing that we need to deliver in Australia over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years, it's really important that we collectively engage in a decarbonisation strategy and ideally to net zero. Look, one of the really important things about this challenge is actually building up the evidence base. I think one of the big challenges we have when we go and speak with government and try to advocate for the profession for net zero or reductions in carbon is to date, a relative inability to point to specific data outputs that show that that architects are important in this process. So for us, it's a really important thing. I think the individual challenge of each of you looking at your dwellings is one thing. The collective opportunity of us coming together to ensure that we get this collective body of data is really, really important. And I want to thank you all for it up front, because it is going to form a really critical part of our advocacy program heading into next year. We're a part of the Parliamentary Friends of Urban Design framework at federal government, and we've been invited into the Parliamentary Friends of Housing discussion roundtables. So it's going to be a really important component of the work we do. The benefit in this is that you'll be able to attach this analysis to your application for the awards next year. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Mel Dodson. Over to you, Mel.
Thanks, Adam, and hi everyone. It's great to be joining you today for the launch. What I'm going to do is just spend a couple of minutes giving you a quick challenge overview, and starting with what is the challenge. And as Adam mentioned, it's been running for a couple of years. It started in Canberra. It's run by volunteers. I mean, essentially, we're all members of the Institute. We've been doing this since 2020. And it's been so successful that this third round is one where we've been able to scale it nationally. So it's available to architect members around the country. And essentially, you can whole of life cycle carbon model your residential projects. A few of these pictograms here are really just to give you a feel for the, I guess, the residential transect. So we're talking residential up to and including 3 stories around Australia. Apartments are excluded from this round of the carbon challenge. So as you move into those much more commercial buildings, with lifts and 4 stories and above, that's not part of this round, but it gives you the rest of the scope of residential. Worked really well in the previous challenge rounds. We have a minimum target, whole of life cycle carbon target of 50%. So you need to improve your carbon footprint by at least 50%. But really, we're encouraging you to aim for net zero or 100% improved on business as usual. And what does business as usual look like? And look, one of the frustrations historically with life cycle carbon modelling has been variance in benchmarks between projects. And so what we have done is we've derived the benchmark from the Australian Residential Standard. If any of you that want to read more about that, you can go to the website, have a look at the rules. There's a really detailed explainer on the data that's contributed to the residential standard, which is the benchmark. There's a few highlights at the bottom about some of the characteristics of that benchmark, and then the baselines, which vary from state and territory around Australia. They're based on that recent research the GBCA did, Our Housing That Weighs a Tonne. So it's a good step towards creating uniformity in terms of benchmarking for whole of life cycle carbon modelling. And that in turn helps instill more confidence in the data and the outcomes. What does business as usual mean in terms of how is residential tracking? Well, according to a really good piece of research that was done in the last couple of years, peer reviewed, residential is on a trajectory where it's about 9 times or 9-fold in excess of our maximum carbon targets. So there's a lot of work to do to reduce residential carbon. I mean, we know some of the trends. We've seen improvements in operating energy in the last few decades, but we have much larger homes and less occupants per dwelling. So sadly, there's a lot of carbon embodied in these larger dwellings across Australia, which is where we're already seeing architects start to make a difference. So, to cite the Canberra challenge, which has run for 2 rounds so far, as Adam mentioned, the average carbon saved per project was around 450 tonnes per project. We found in those 2 previous rounds that over half the entries that were submitted achieved net zero. So we had a hunch that our architect members were already making carbon reductions, but perhaps not measuring them and taking a baseline. And this is what we found, that a number of the very sensible and practical design decisions that you're making, that I would call good design, are in fact translating to carbon emission reductions. And then, why wouldn't you just use a design checklist? Why residential carbon modelling? Well, really, the advantage of whole of life cycle carbon modelling is it can overlay as an iterative design tool onto your design processes, and it's sustainability agnostic as well. So, you know, whether you're in the passive house space or 8-star NatHERS, you know, you design your sustainable projects in the way that works well for you and your clients. And this is another tool to help you with that design process. And of course, it's the collective effort, as Adam said, that really can help make an impact. And, you know, there's some examples here on the screen. Collectively, what these examples amounted to was architects across 2 rounds in Canberra saving carbon equal to planting over 120,000 trees so far. So we're keen to see where we can now take this nationally. Apologies. And so giving you a couple of screenshots here of the tool. You're going to see a demo shortly of the tool, but, you know, very iterative. It draws on, for those of you that know eTool already, because you've been using an eTool or your consultants are using eTool, this is effectively a curated menu. So it's a curated for residential projects and known as Rapid LCA, has been used now across, this will be the 3rd round of the Carbon Challenge. It follows international ISO standards, uses rigorous carbon data sets. Essentially, Cerclos have done the complex data analysis so that we don't have to. And what we are able to do is interact with the software and in turn get feedback to inform our design processes. And you can do that repeatedly as you develop the design. And of course, it really needs to be said that Cerclos have generously supported this challenge for 5 years now. Essentially, that's meant bringing a lot of in-kind goodwill to our member architects so that you can model your projects for under $100 per dwelling. So that's a heavily discounted opportunity for you to introduce or maybe continue to do life cycle carbon modelling on your projects and for your clients. And there's a lot of resources that we've prepared and tested over a number of rounds of the Carbon Challenge. And so there's videos and checklists. This is a screenshot from the website. And there's opportunities for you to request and participate in peer-to-peer life cycle assessment sessions with us. There's self-help videos on how to model, and there's a simple checklist that you can follow and submit with your entry within Rapid LCA, and likewise you'll submit a poster as well. It's all very straightforward, but we're here to help and to guide you through the process with any questions you might have. And then, as Adam mentioned, we've aligned the challenge to the Architecture Awards program this year, and we're really excited about that. It means that in 2026, you'll be able to submit your life cycle assessment report with your residential awards entry, and there are now prompts in the sustainability checklist for you to upload your LCA report, because among our goals as an institute are that we really want to profile the role of good design in reducing carbon. And like in the previous rounds, we'll tie in the work that you do to exhibitions and events through 2026. And so you can see here some examples from previous exhibitions and events that we held and sessions with the Sustainability Minister. So that advocacy and showcasing and promotion of good design and the links to carbon reductions and evidence is really what we're looking forward to doing in the second half of next year. And so enough of that now from me, because what I want to do is queue up the software demo for you. So we're going to take you through a quick demo by Rob of the Rapid LCA software. And so thanks, Ruth.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Australian Zero Carbon Housing Challenge. I'm Rob Henry and I'm recording this tutorial from the lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people of the ACT region. Today I will be taking you through a quick tutorial of the Rapid LCA app by Cerclos. This is the app that the challenge is using to calculate whole of life carbon on residential projects, both in design and recently completed. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using a project that I've recently been working on with the ACT Suburban Land Agency. This project is a unique micro-lot housing precinct of 8 dwellings on 90 square metre blocks of land and is designed around a community title common green. The houses are a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom designs, and today we'll be modelling one of these houses, which is a 2-bedroom, 2-storey dwelling with 1.5 bathrooms. So to get started, go to the challenge website, and that's lowcarbonhousing.com.au, and go to the Start Modelling page. Here you'll find a whole bunch of resources that are really useful to go through, including videos, FAQs, and some checklists. When you click the model now, it takes you through to the Rapid LCA website, which is rapidlca.app. It's a good idea to gather some base information on your project before getting started, such as your NatHERS rating, floor areas, and things like square meterage of different cladding, windows, etc. However, you can just jump in and start modelling and get that information as you go through. So to start modelling, you go to Add New Build, and then type in the city that's relevant to your project. What this will do is it'll bring you through to a page that allows you to click on the the Australian Zero Carbon Housing Challenge. In this case, it's the ACT. And then you go to Create Lot. Here you enter in the project address and a brief description of the project, effectively its name. And create design. The app will now upload the baseline design relevant to your project location. This baseline represents the business as usual or the average house being built in your state and territory at the time. So you can see here, it's a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bathroom, 2 garage house of a roughly 234 square meters. From here, this is where you start to customize the data to reflect your design. So for my project, I'm going to start changing the elements to 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms, a single carport. It's over 2 stories and has floor to ceiling heights of 2.7. And a gross floor area of 95 square meters plus a 21 square meter carport. So that's 116 square meters. And for this house, I'm just going to quickly change the NatHERS rating to the 8.5 stars. From here, to carry on, you've got to unlock the full features, and this is where you have to pay for the competition fee. For me, I've got a credit, which I'm just going to use. And what it does is it unlocks all of the segments running through here, which allows you to further update the data on your project. So what I'm going to do is go through this quite quickly, and I'll miss a whole bunch of stuff for this particular one, just to show you a few of the next bits. So I'm going to go to the integrated services. And for this one, I might just change the heat pump from a standard heat pump to a high efficiency heat pump. And you hit done. And then we'll continue on into some of the other areas. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of information for you to be adding into it. Here, I might change our solar PV system. So we're putting a 5.5 kilowatt system into this project. So I'll add that to it. So what we're expecting for you to do for the challenge is to go through each of these items and customize all of the elements for it. For me, that will probably do for the initial assessment to keep this quick. So we'll just zip through these areas and head to the results page. So as you can see, I've managed to get a zero carbon outcome with this with 100% reduction, which is fantastic. And so in order to carry on, we would hit the submit page. I just want to let you know that there's a redesign link, which takes you back through each of these, so you can go back to that at any point. But for the purpose of this exercise, we'll hit submit. A few tick boxes to do. And then there's a few items that we're asking you to add as well. An entrant checklist. Shall add. Challenge poster. And then you simply hit submit. Whoops, no, you don't. A couple of other elements to tick off there, sorry. And hit submit. So what this does is it now takes you to the area where there are reports section, which is where you can better analyze things like energy, materials, and construction to see what the impact is for your carbon footprint. And here it goes. But just to give you a snapshot of what these reports look like, there's a life cycle assessment and a compliance report and some other historical reports as well. You can also share your challenge. There's a shareable link, invite others to view and edit it, or even send a report. And again, as I mentioned, you can still refine your design after this point by clicking on the redesign button. So good luck with your modeling, and don't forget, if you get stuck, go to the FAQs that are on our website or submit a question through our challenge administrator. Both Cerclos and the challenge team are here to help. Thanks very much.
And thank you, Rob. I think that was an excellent overview of what is a really simple to use tool. So the video that you saw is one of the resources that's going to be available online for you. Which now that brings me to the wonderful panel of architects designing for reduced residential carbon. This virtual roundtable is going to explore low to net zero projects and practice insights. We're also going to talk about tips and tricks along with the broader decarbonisation imperative. And we'll also talk about how the challenge and the evidence it provides will support really, really, really crucial institute advocacy to industry and to government. We'd also like to hear from you, so put your questions into the Q&A. And if you have a question for the panel on the challenge or the Rapid LCA software, we'll look to answer your question today. And any questions we don't get to during the session, we'll follow up and publish some of those answers through the FAQs on the website. So to start with, I would like to introduce Sarah Lebner, who is the Director of CUI Architecture and a really fantastic regional practice focusing on energy efficient, resilient and low carbon homes. CUI practices throughout the Victorian High Country, New South Wales, Snowy Mountains, ACT and surround. And prior to relocating, Sarah was the principal architect at Lighthouse Architecture and Science in Canberra. She's also the author of 101 Things I Did Not Learn at in Architecture School and a recipient of the 2023 Dulux Study Tour Prize, as well as, it keeps coming, the Australian Institute of Architects 2020 National Emerging Architect Prize winner. And I won't go through all of her project architecture awards in addition, but there are quite a few. Sarah joins us today as a past entrant of the challenge and a really passionate advocate for this program as a very easy, low time and low cost introduction to carbon calculating and life cycle assessments insights for small practices. So Sarah, take it away.
Oh, thank you very much, Jane, and hello everybody. So I want to start by setting the scene that we are a very small practice of 3 part-time staff. We do about 2/3 renovation and 1/3 new build. And now we seem to be branching into farm stay specialties such as the silos accommodation. So since being part of the Canberra Low Carbon Housing Challenge a couple of years ago, it is our policy that all of our projects go through the Cerclos Rapid LCA in-house. It's a non-negotiable and it's just part of our usual service. We use it for various different insights. So for our on-grid renos and new builds, we use the tool by default as intended. And for off-grid, we focus more on the total global warming potential or carbon footprint, which is that equivalent tons of carbon. And we look to offset in other ways. So for example, we do a lot of rural jobs. So we've had 2 clients who we were able to work out how many trees they need to plant on their property to estimate offset that. Next slide, please. We use the tool alongside thermal energy simulation software. So we're using the Powerhouse app. And what blows my mind is that compared to 5 years ago, say, we just have all these really easy, accessible, affordable tools that aren't just helping us optimize the project, but I really think the hidden benefit is unlocking that contextual understanding. So which bits do matter the most and how do they affect the other bits? So on new builds, combining these tools has meant we can look at thorny questions like concrete slabs or window types where one might be more carbon intensive but gives us greater performance. And what does that really mean for us across the life cycle carbon for a project? Next slide, please. As we've gone along, we've made our other tools like Revit make the process easier as well. So these days, our Revit template has a couple of schedules set up that quickly calculate our window area and each wall type area so that filling in our rapid LCA report now takes us maybe an hour. And it also makes our clients' lives easier because they can get that information to help them make decisions. So for example, on a new build, we told some clients recently that switching from the regular concrete to the EcoPack concrete was going to be about a 5% change to their upfront carbon, which might not sound like much, but it's a lot in the context of all the other elements in the home. And then they also had that builder's cost difference, which from memory was under $1,000. So they can balance up all those things in an informed way. And then, of course, as time goes on, you learn more intuitively and you make better decisions from the get-go. So some of our clients get a little disappointed that we don't go through this big optimization redesign stage. But I find that as you go along and use these tools more over time, you just get better at steering the ship in the right place to start with. Next slide, please. So one very quick example, this is an Alts and Ads project in Canberra. It's an 80s brick veneer home. North is up to the top of the page. It currently has 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a series of pretty dysfunctional small living spaces. So we're keeping the bedrooms and the bathroom and converting the laundry into a new ensuite, plus a European hallway laundry, and then popping out under the existing deep eave on that northern veranda to claim a little bit more living area, as well as create a sort of new courtyard that captures the winter light. We're changing the front of that carport to be angled to allow that winter sun angle light right into that quite small little courtyard. And then that allows us to claim a whole new bedroom and have a kitchen, living, dining space that will feel a lot brighter and functional, even though the footprint is about the same. When you're modeling a renovation in the software, it's still really easy because you simply exclude the bits that are being retained, and there are templates set up where you might just be stripping the plasterboard, installing insulation bats and replastering and repainting, for example. So we modelled this recently, and as a 121 square metre home, it's currently achieving 7.9 stars EER. That's effectively 8.4 if we go out of regulatory mode and tighten up the draft proofing a little bit to 5 air changes, which we can do in the Powerhouse app. And what the eTool estimate tells us, the rapid LCA, is that we achieve a 63% reduction of upfront carbon compared to an average new family home, which, considering this is essentially 2/3 new house and really resetting the clock on this home, I think that's a pretty powerful indicator for that really significant retrofitting and renovating is the power it holds over knockdown rebuild. And then with a 7 kilowatt PV system factored in, we achieve 97% reduction total LCA, so effectively carbon neutral, although we always caution a bit in using that term because it does rely heavily on offsetting to a grid that might currently offer fossil fuel offsets, but is inevitably going to green quickly. Final slide, please. And I wanted to finish by saying I'm really aware that some people in here may not have used any of this stuff before, and it might be quite intimidating, and it might feel this big, laborious new task of learning to tackle that will take a lot of time or money, but it is really not. It's just about jumping in and having a go and trying to learn little bit at a time. And this competition is a really fun, motivating, easy way to give it a go, to get some support while you're giving it a go. And then you end up with some great material at the end that you can share with your audience and potential clients and really build that authority to potential clients, which has been another massive benefit for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. That was really wonderful and great to hear just how easy it is to get going in terms of life cycle assessments. So, okay, and how easy it is to embed that within your design processes and the outcomes, and I think one of the other points was I think accounting for carbon has been really easy and really cost effective for your clients. So I think that's really fantastic. So thank you, Sarah. Now, I would now like to hand over to Patrick Kelly, who is an architect at Breathe Architecture, where he leads research and practice integration around embodied carbon and material lifecycle analysis. He draws on his background in data-driven design and sustainable materials, and Patrick develops tools and methodologies to help Breathe measure and reduce carbon at every stage of the design, from early stage benchmarks to detailed material specifications. He's committed to transparent, evidence-based decision-making that empowers design teams to deliver architecture with measurable environmental integrity. And Patrick, take it away.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Jane. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here, and thanks for coming along. My name is Patrick Kelly, and I'm an architect here at Breathe. And I suppose I've been spearheading some of our carbon management strategy. I'll give you a bit of a quick overview about our approach and our journey in carbon management. Due to the types of projects that we are involved in, which is typically multi-residential dwellings, we have kind of developed our own system. But I'm hoping that people today will find it useful and that we can kind of share some tips that we've learned along the way. When we started this journey, I put together a diagram quite similar to this one for our team. It's a diagram that I keep on coming back to because I believe it encapsulates some of the challenges related to carbon management that we faced as a practice. At the time, we were going through the process of designing lots of buildings, and then we were engaging external consultants to prepare life cycle assessments for us. The problem was that these were occurring right at the end of a project, either when they were on site or more often than not when they were constructed. This meant that we had little ability to kind of change or make any amendments based on the findings of these reports. Often they would kind of come in via email, we'd all take a look at them, and then they would kind of be stored away on the server, never to be opened again. For us, it became important that we engage with carbon early so that we could make achievable and actionable decisions about it. As you can kind of see from the diagram, the earlier we started thinking about carbon, the greater our ability to influence is. The challenging part is that the earlier you start to calculate carbon, the less confident you are in the results. It's a bit of a chicken and egg sort of thing. For us, it became about picking points through the design process, looking at what some of the information we had at the time was, and looking at the decisions we were making at those times and how carbon could influence those decisions. So we kind of wanted to pull it away from doing just the traditional LCA right at the end of construction to kind of start right in the feasibility stage, doing early benchmarking, doing some early kind of carbon testing as we're going through kind of sketch and develop design, and then doing what we kind of call carbon snapshots. I'll jump to the next slide. So when we started this, I picked up 10 different multi-residential buildings that we had already completed. And I went back to the earliest sets of drawings that we had for these buildings. For us, this was typically feasibility drawings, so pre-town planning, very blocky drawings, not lots of information on them. But there was two key bits of information that we broadly knew. Firstly, we understood the breakdown of these buildings in terms of their accommodation. So how many studios, 1-bed, 2-bed units we had, how many townhouses, etc. From that, we could determine the rough occupancy of the building, which you can see along the x-axis in this graph. We also roughly knew how big each of these spaces were. We knew how much circulation space there was, roughly how much residential, back of house services, etc. We then use some typical benchmarks to extrapolate a very, very rough business as usual estimate for the total carbon of a building, which is along the y-axis. Each dot in this graph represents a building, and the figure next to it is the amount of embodied carbon per occupant, which for us, we believe is the best way to measure carbon. This was based on just if we built a business as usual building. We knew that if we were clever about the carbon decisions we made during the design, then we could effectively drop that dot along that line to get it lower. We have a target of just under 25 tons of carbon per occupant, and you can kind of see for us what this graph highlighted is how some buildings kind of almost get there through sheer efficiency alone, whereas other buildings have lots of work to do. What I love about this is that it's a really easy way to get people in our office engaged with thinking about carbon at an early stage. So I show this graph at each of our team meetings. When we get a new project on, we just plop it on and it comes up into the graph, and it can kind of start to form a bit of a discussion on what's working on a particular project, maybe not what's working and how it compares to other projects we've had in the office. What's also really great about it is, from my perspective, it's really easy and quick to do. At this stage, we're not stressing about any materials or EPDs or carbon coefficients or any of that sort of stuff. We're just looking at area as a rough impact of what that's having on carbon. I jump to the next slide. Following on from this, what normally happens is that as the design progresses, we try and focus in on one or two key areas of a building. One thing that I've noticed is that in architecture, everything tends to be related to everything else, and people can quickly become overwhelmed when trying to think about it from a carbon perspective. So a lot of what I do is just help people narrow it down and focusing on one or two key areas to test. Every building's a little bit different. It often ends up with me discussing, structural efficiencies or material selections. I've put this example up. I like it because it's quite graphical, but it's a test of two different wall build-ups. And here it's not about going one is necessarily better than the other, therefore we must use it, but it's about going through within each system, what are the levers we have as designers to kind of change the carbon outputs and how we might deliver a better design from this. Jumping on to the next slide. Then as the design begins to take shape and we have a rough idea of what the building will look at, we do what we kind of call a carbon snapshot. And I kind of like that terminology because it doesn't sound too intimidating, but it's just a moment of time. I won't go through kind of the technical aspects of this, but in essence, it's a calculation that looks at all of the materials in a project. It's quite useful when you're going through that process of selecting materials and you're trying to understand the weighted impacts different materials are having. And jumping on to the next slide. So just some key takeaways, based on our observations and what we're seeing. Typically for us, the thing that makes the biggest impact is design efficiency. And that can happen right at the start of the project, even when we don't know a lot of information. Often the decisions here blow everything else out of the water that we make downstream from that. Then we have found that through some of those isolated tests that reductionism is really effective. It's a really good kind of mindset shift, forcing us to question why we're using certain materials, what the purpose of the design is, and how we can make it more efficient. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle is the material selection. So once we kind of establish what the buildings looks like and kind of what the materials are, it's then a case of kind of understanding a little bit more from manufacturers and various people about kind of the carbon that's embedded within those materials. And beyond this, I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is a mentality shift in our office. For us, carbon's not really a full stop. And my biggest fear is people treat this as a test that you need to do and you either pass or fail and then you move on from it. For us, what we've found to be so much more insightful is when we treat carbon as a conversation starter. We've done some testing, here are some results. Now, what are the tools we have as designers to kind of change that and think about it in different ways? Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. That was really brilliant, and I love the idea that there might be a carbon budget per person, which I think is really important. I think sometimes in the housing debate, we sometimes talk about there being a housing occupancy issue because houses are growing so large, and at the same time the number of occupants are reducing. So thinking about housing having an occupancy budget, or per occupancy budget, I think is a great one. Wonderful. All right. Well, I think we're going to now get to the panel discussion. And do we have, there we go. We've got Patrick, Sarah and Adam joining us back on the screen now. So I think, Adam, can we go to you first? And look, can you talk about the power of building an evidence base to inform the advocacy that the Institute might do, and how a collective effort by architects in terms of decarbonisation might inform better policy across the nation?
Yeah, thanks, Jan. I mean, I think whenever we go and meet with federal politicians or state politicians or even local politicians, to be honest, they're always asking for the evidence because it is about numbers. We need to show numbers. It's amazing we can go to them and say, look, we have 14,500 members across the country and we represent all of the corners of the continent. But unless we can start to talk to them about specific numbers and specific benefits that we can deliver as a profession, it's really difficult for them to really make any difference. I know that we would all like to see, well, generally, architects would like to see stricter controls around some of these things. We'd like to have like a maximum carbon amount per dwelling or per resident or per bedroom, or some level of measure that we could get the federal government or state government to sign up to. But unless we can show them that it is achievable within a kind of affordable metrics, it's almost impossible for parliamentarians to respond to that. It's almost impossible for them to do anything about it at all, to be honest. And we often get trumped by industry groups, like interest groups and lobbyists from other sectors of the property industry who are really disinterested or much less interested in it than we are. Maybe they're not disinterested, but they're much less interested in this than we are from a kind of whole of community perspective. So I do think that something like this is critical if we're going to provide that opportunity for, like we've got amazing people listening at the moment, amazing federal parliamentarians, Elizabeth Watson-Brown, David Pocock, members from the both Liberal and Labor side of the House who want to affect change, but they want to do it in a way that doesn't cut people out of affordability. And we always have a discussion with them that, a cheap house doesn't mean a cheap life, that actually buying a cheap house at the edge of the suburbs, the quickest thing you can throw up, and it does tick the box of getting people into housing, but it doesn't mean that the person that lives there has any kind of level of quality or amenity moving forward. So we need to shift that mindset that cheap housing means good housing, and we need to put it into a mindset of actually investing up front so that people have longevity in that dwelling and they can actually afford to live there better with high levels of amenity. I think something like this is really critical to us providing a whole of profession approach to it.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And I think one of the brilliant things about the Canberra round and one of the things we're really hoping to showcase is that it's really affordable to reduce your carbon footprint right across the country. I think a good percentage of the projects that were in the 90 houses that we modelled in the Canberra Challenge. A large percentage of those projects actually met the ACT government's affordability criteria, and so it was. And the thing was, is they were built, and so no one can argue with that. You say we've already done it.
100%.
It's we met the carbon outcomes. We met the really high star ratings, whatever rating tool you're using in your various state. We had passive design. We had passive house. And across the spectrum, we were able to show that not only was it easy to do, we've already done it, and it was affordable to do as well. So
yeah, and I also think, Jane, one of the really important things is we're often collected as a profession into just doing big houses for rich people. We kind of create that rod for our own back sometimes in the way in which we celebrate architecture. But we all know that actually there's many more architects delivering really great dwellings that might not make the cover of a magazine, but they're actually really important to delivering a high level of amenity and good quality outcomes for the community. And what we want to be able to talk about is exactly those outcomes where architect design houses are delivering quality, and we can talk to a local newspaper or a broadsheet, a national newspaper, but without the data and without you or everyone filling it in and giving us the kind of information. And it's both through this process, but also through the awards. I know that people think that, or a lot of people think that the only thing that we kind of celebrate in the awards is the people who win the awards. But actually, we use the awards program to grab information on projects, and we often pivot media requests from those awards programs to specific projects, which may not have won awards, but do actually show something else that is really important that we're trying to educate the general public about through media or through media and discussion, but also federal politicians and local politicians. So yeah, I really, really, really encourage the kind of participation. And in fact, I've been looking at this thinking, I'm going to do this. I just did my mum and dad's house. I'm going to do it.
Excellent. We would love that. Sarah,
I probably can't win it though, can I?
Sarah, you're a woman after my own heart. I think that if you can schedule a window and you can schedule a door, you can also schedule your carbon. And something that we've been really working on is working into the parameters in Revit. And setting up our templates and schedules so that it's really easy to understand where the carbon is sitting within the building. You briefly mentioned that you've been using a lot of insights from Rapid LCA to really directly change a number of the key products or materials that you're using. And maybe could you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, a few that come to mind from things we've learnt from using this software and other similar software is, we all know heat pumps are great for hot water. We didn't realise that the type of heat pump and the type of coolant it uses is actually really significant in terms of a carbon footprint point of view. Water, we hadn't thought about as much as a carbon impact, but that comes into play. Energy monitoring. So if clients are not just educated on how to use their home, but they've also got those tools to monitor, that comes into it. So we've become a bit more active in advising clients and making sure that they might have ways to monitor their home. And what else do I have? Tiles being fairly carbon intensive. We've sort of gone away from using as much tiling in bathroom areas. Yeah, funny little interesting, surprising things that we've learned along the way.
Yeah, thank you. And Patrick, maybe across to you, in terms of carbon reduction, how are you balancing the carbon reduction discussion with drivers like cost or durability? I know for a lot of my clients, durability and longevity is a really critical driver for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting discussion. And the thing we kind of say here is that we see carbon as a tool in that discussion. It's not the be all and end all. And I think sometimes people have a tendency to gravitate towards numbers, but it's really about how do we frame this in kind of in a broader sense so that we have this information available, and then we can assess things like which of these products might last the longest, how long do we think that would be. There's also a cost parameter to that. And I find that quite useful because very often when we talk about kind of reductionism or trying to do more with less, that kind of ties in very nicely with cost. And so for a lot of our clients who kind of, that's a really important factor for them, that can be a really good way to kind of introducing them to talking about carbon.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I might just have a follow-up question there, Patrick. How do you make carbon accounting more visual and kind of more accessible so that non-technical audiences really begin to understand it?
It's one of the reasons I kind of had all of those graphs in the presentation, because I kind of was here and I kept presenting kind of spreadsheets and different things, and it glazes over people's eyes. But you show someone a graph and there's a green section and a red section, and you go, this is good, this is bad. It can kind of give people a bit of a direction there. I think it's also kind of important to keep things relatively simple. You don't want to delve too much into the technical aspects of it, because yeah, you just kind of lose people's interest. And I think kind of having a couple of core key principles, and like for us, we're saying trying to be more spatially efficient. That's a really easy thing to comprehend and understand, and being able to articulate that becomes really important.
Yeah. And I think when you begin to talk about building less, obviously, if you're building less, it's relatively easy to understand that that's going to cost you less as well.
Yeah.
And most clients I'm talking to at the moment are really keen on that kind of concept. I might go to Adam now. I think Sarah was talking about a number of adaptive reuse examples. I guess what's one of the big roles of adaptive reuse, and kind of thinking about heritage in the built environment in terms of reducing carbon?
Yeah, I mean, I really think, actually, to be honest, there will be no such thing as heritage in a very short period of time. It will be built structures. We'll actually, what we value at the moment is because something's old. Actually, what we will value is because something is built. And I think we've seen some really massive shifts in the last 12 months. I was talking today at another event around carbon, and I was talking about the way in which in the last 12 months, development has gone from being a dirty word to being something that a lot of the community support. So it's almost like developers got their social license back quite quickly because of the challenge around housing and housing affordability and quantum of housing that we're producing. Now that's different across different states, but particularly in New South Wales, developers kind of got a social license back, and they've been given an opportunity to build again. I think the interesting thing, I'm hoping, and I really do think that the interesting thing is going to be that we're going to get to a point where we're going to have to value things that are built over things that are unbuilt. And at the moment, we actually see most of Australia sees a site as a site independent of what's on it or not. And often people will buy a house or a lot simply for the fact they want to demolish it and build something themselves. So I'm super excited about that. I would like to see us and within these walls, because people will send me hate mail after I say this, but I'd love it to see us not having a heritage award at all, because what it would be nice to think about is that actually we consider everything with the same level of value, independent of whether we think it is culturally important. That actually it's about kind of fabric importance. That is kind of the highest order priority. But yeah, I mean, obviously everyone, we're talking kind of preaching to the converted on these screens, but the best building, the most carbon efficient building is the building that's already built, right? So how do we make better use of them? It's going to be I think a great discussion, particularly next year in the Parliamentary Friends of Urban Design. I think there's a lot of discussion that we have to have with the general public and with parliamentarians about the value of what exists.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And I think, Sarah, you've been finding a few very interesting bits of building fabric lately, to say, with some of the silos and other work that you've been doing, which is incredible. I guess I did want to ask you, though, about how incorporating life cycle carbon into your design process has prompted you to create some of those policies and practice goals around carbon.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. And I think a really good question has come in the Q&A that overlaps with this. Someone has essentially said, we know that small is less to heat and less footprint. Do we really need the LCA to give us the data? Don't we just know that? And I'd love to answer that along with your question and say, for me, the question has always been, how do we understand the sweet spots between energy efficiency, carbon, and cost? And we're really interested in finding the sweet spots using fairly standard construction there. And this tool, alongside using our energy efficiency software and Powerhouse app, putting all of those together along with the cost information we're getting from builders, that's where the data becomes really powerful, because it's easy to design the best thing ever with an endless budget. We all know how to do the best stuff. I think it's easy to do the best stuff, but we have these big sticky challenges of how do we actually provide optimal stuff for whatever scenario we are working in. And that's where the data comes into it. So I guess after the first round, what I really took from that was just getting some kind of scope around what those carbon numbers looked like. How much does it take to offset carbon? How much were we saving by making the footprint smaller or making other decisions? How did the footprint weigh up compared to other changing materials? So just getting that really rough overview of how numbers actually compare. And then we've tied that with understanding our energy efficiency sweet spot, what we can achieve with standard construction, and also what we can easily offset to get net use with when we're using the Powerhouse app. And we've sort of come up with a benchmark. We're really happy when we get to carbon neutral LCA and net zero operational with a 6 kilowatt solar system. So that was the first goal we started setting in all our projects. And now we're just trying to better understand and wrap our head around setting ourselves goals for that upfront carbon, because the offset metric is inherently troublesome. When we did the first round, it was really easy because the grid had more coal in it, and we've noticed we've gone back through and it's a bit trickier to do that now, as it should be, because the grid is greening. So we're trying to study that offset metric less and understand our upfront carbon more. So we're trying to aim for 30% less upfront carbon compared to the reference home, and we'll see how we go. It's all about tracking it and assessing and seeing how you're going.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. I think that ability to baseline carbon for your own practice and really understand where the metrics are around the sorts of within your own context, within the regional kind of climate conditions where you're practicing, and the type of practice you have. And at the same time, I think going to help the Institute of Architects really understand much more broadly around what some of those benchmarks might be in terms of upfront carbon, embodied carbon versus operational carbon, and really help us refine that decarbonisation plan. When we did the Canberra round, what we were surprised to find that we were much more well progressed than we thought we were. And so, I think what I'm a bit hopeful is that through this next round, we might be able to set some more optimistic targets, which would be a pretty amazing thing to do.
I was going to say, Jane,
I think
just while you're
yep,
talking
Adam,
about that, I
yep.
mean, I think one of the interesting things is that the value that this kind of data can actually help us advocate across different project typologies as well, because one of the things that's often difficult to talk to people about is what design is. And we kind of been having this discussion at the moment about there's no such thing as no design. It's either good design or bad design. There is no such thing as no design. And often government officials or parliamentarians like to think that design gets in the way. It's expensive. But actually, if you don't design it well, you're just designing it badly. You're just choosing not to design it well, right? So
I love
think
that.
so I think what the thing that's really great about that is about what's happened in Canberra and the kind of data that you've been able to get and where we might be able to head this to is it helps underpin an understanding that having designers involved early delivers results, independent of whether it's a house or an apartment building or a commercial office building or a school, because we often find it difficult. We're not going to have as much data sets, for example, over schools, right? But if we can prove that actually having an architect involved early on in a project for a house delivers the type of outputs that we're talking about today, it allows us to kind of reference that across to schools and say to schools, infrastructures, departments across the country, hang on a minute, you're doing a whole lot of crappy buildings that actually have really bad carbon and actually have really low life cycle outcomes in terms of the longevity of their use. We're going to be able to advocate for better conditions for the profession across those building typologies as well. So I do think it's really important that we think about this not only within the context of dwellings, but within the context of just construction.
Yeah. Adam, just while we're on the advocacy piece, the Institute's decarbonisation strategy, tell me about, is that aligned with, anybody else across the built environment?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's aligned across a lot of our participating industry groups. And so what we've really tried to do is get a decarbonisation plan which is shared. And I think one of the things we're really focusing on at the moment is to make sure that we're in step with other organisations like the Green Building Council, for example, so that we can kind of advocate with them and say, actually, we're not 14,500, we're 20,500 members, or we're 120,000 members. So we're really trying to look at the amplification of the efforts that we're making across some of these plans to ensure that we can share that knowledge, we can piggyback the knowledge, and we really can amplify the influence. Because to be honest, if we're sitting in a room and we can say that the Green Building Council, the Property Council, for example, the master builders and architects are all aligned, it's like a tick, tick, tick government, and they almost say, well, let's go and do it, right? If we're there by ourselves and we say, oh, it's just us, they sometimes look at us like we're a bit crazy because we're designers. So it's good to try and flatten it out and share the knowledge.
Yeah, I think so too. And yeah, when we come in as a big pack and we're all agreed, I think we're in a great position to move forward and get better outcomes for the community and also the environment. Sarah, you talked about something earlier, and I'm going to ask you a question about it. I think you're in living in Canberra and practicing in Canberra for a long time, and you were saying we can design the best, but what we want to do here is optimize. And I'm wondering, is actually kind of optimizing and creating a more sustainable outcome, is dematerializing, is a low carbon outcome, in terms of an 8.5 rating, is that kind of the new, is that becoming the new black, if you like, or the new kind of aesthetic? Is that actually the better educated the community is on these sorts of things? So does that just start to change, I guess, what keeping up with the Joneses might look like in the future?
Yeah, I think you touch on it's a really great point, because if we don't have the data or the stats or the fun facts or the knowledge to compare, it's very hard for us to talk about the value of what we're doing, just as Adam said, with how do we prove good design. And it has been tricky historically to say, look, I might not be doing a project that's going to be in a magazine or win these awards, but it's really good because I'm really clever at solving all these things. But it's been hard to equate what things you were solving. And one of the things we've done really up front and center in our practice is set those 18 intentions, which the public just can't get enough of. Even if they're not thinking about working with us, it gives them 18 things to think about that they might then set their own similar goals to take to whichever architect, designer, builder they might be working with. So the more we can understand and communicate exactly what it is we are aiming for, if it's not just the best by this sort of descriptive, unmeasurable metric, then that's just good for everyone, really.
Yeah, and I think, I'm really excited by this sort of shift in kind of understanding the numbers behind those beautiful images that we often talk about. I'd love to sort of set a goal that none of us ever share just a pretty image without the information again. That'd be a great goal to set for us in across our practices, and I think, what might that do in terms of public understanding about what architects do, and perhaps, respect for the profession at large and the sort of work we do, and gosh, might just have sustainable businesses.
And sorry, Jane, just to add one more thought there, you would know in the ACT we've had compulsory reporting of star ratings on homes that have been for sale for years. And what that's done to drive public awareness of star ratings is phenomenal. And you step out of the ACT, we work in New South Wales and Victoria, and people just aren't aware of that. So having it's amazing to put the words and the comparison. You're giving people other things to compare and sort of benchmark themselves.
Can I just add to that too, Jane? I mean, I think the great opportunity with this is that we do want to move the awards program to something which it has got really strong data around it. We've had attempts at that before. We're just undergoing a national awards review at the moment to see how we might be able to do that. I think this is a really good test case to see what comes out of this and how we might then start to look at it across other building typologies, because ideally we could get to a point where we don't need regulation, where actually we regulate ourselves, where as a profession we say, hang on a minute, as a kind of professional group, we have standards as a professional group of people that we want to adhere to collectively, and we start to say we're going to hit these targets in everything that we do. So I do think it's a really great observation, Sarah, about the star system in Canberra, but it could be something that we just do, right? We just start to, every time, it's one of those requirements that if you're publishing a house, it always has to have the rating attached to it, and it's something that I think we could help drive in that sense.
Yeah, it's sort of, the ratings on the cereal box, how much sugar has it got in it? It'd be great to kind of see, how's it going to perform, how, and how much sugar, how much energy is it going to give you? All of those sorts of things are a potential future that also helps demonstrate the value of engaging an architect, which I think is really critical. Now, Sarah, I might just quickly go to you, and perhaps Patrick, you can speak to this as well. In terms of driving automation in the software that you're using, I think Sarah, you were talking about Revit. How is that kind of helping you speed up your modelling and the time? And maybe if you can compare it to the first time you did the LCA challenge and how long it took you and how quickly you can do it today.
Yes, and I mean, I think we're at the baby end of this. So again, I'm just really aware that there's a lot of small practitioners out there that we've just got so much on our plate already, and it might seem like this big daunting task, but for us, it's just been as simple as setting up a few schedules. Every time we set up a new project, we know that there's a tab there that's going to have our window area and creating it for each wall type. The first time we did it, the measuring process is going to your elevations and doing a hatch over it to work out what the wall area is, and doing all the maths. But now that we've got those few things set up and a little cheat sheet for LCA reminding us what the different things that we use typically are, if we haven't specified those things already, I think maybe the first time we did it might have taken 2 hours plus a bit of reading through the facts, and the competition's great because you have those sort of really relevant pre-made facts set up for you. And then now I think we can easily get through one in less than an hour. And then I'd love to hear, I think Patrick's at the other end of the spectrum, I think. I'd love to hear what they're doing in Revit.
It's actually not too different. I mean, when we started, we kind of took the approach of like, we know we already do this modeling to produce all of our drawings, and we know we've got lots of information within that model about exactly how much materials we're using. It was just finding a way of like a consistent way of extracting that and then being able to kind of determine carbon on that. it was definitely a bit of a journey. I mean, the first couple of times we did it, we were just getting absolutely wild numbers and we couldn't understand it. And you'd go in and you'd kind of have to root around and figure out what was going on. But once we got the hang of it and we kind of changed only a couple of things with the way we model, it's become a lot more efficient. In principle, it's something that, it's all there. So we should just be able to click a button and it tells us. It's never worked like that. There's always a little bit of back and forth and kind of having to use a little bit of common sense with things. But we already, I think, regardless of practice size, because I've worked in a couple of different ones, it's like we already do so much modeling. It's just how can we use that information better?
Yeah.
I love your graphs, Patrick, by the way. Just much love for those graphs. It'd be so great if we could just all input our own projects into your graph. It would be amazing.
Send them to me and I'll,
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. And I think we're almost wrapping up to the end. So I might just sort of do around the grounds. And
there was a question.
Adam, I might start with you.
Yep.
I guess a final comment from you in terms of the challenge.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. I mean, there was a question too, whether by entering this, you automatically entered the awards or you had to enter both. No. They're two different things. It just means that once you've entered this, you've got data that the Institute will accept as the sustainability information for the award. So just to be clear about that. Look, I think it's an incredible opportunity for us to act collectively as a profession. One of the challenges, I think, when you sit on my side of the fence at the moment as a president, we always get told by members what you need to do is. I think actually this is one of these things that we need to do. And I think it's one of the things that we need to do collectively to get the data to enable us to have the conversation to further the value of architects and architecture within the built environment. Without this kind of data, it's really, really hard to kind of convince bureaucrats or politicians as to why we're necessary. It's very hard for them to understand what good design is. When good design has an attribute to it and has a data set with it, it's much simpler. We work in a data set world. So I just want to really thank everybody who's involved in organizing it, because this is an immense amount of work. To everyone who's going to participate, and as I said, I'm actually going to participate. I think it's a really interesting thing to get in your head. I haven't done it before, so I'm excited about doing it. But congratulations to everybody. And really want I look forward to seeing what the outcomes are, and I look forward to getting the data set so I can go and whack people over the heads with it and say, see, we are doing a good job.
Patrick, last word from you.
Yeah, look, again, thank you to everyone for putting this together, because it's an immense amount of work. And I think just even getting the conversation going on this and getting people doing it's such a huge step that we kind of desperately need. I think the bit of advice I got right at the start of this, kind of we have this saying, it's like perfectly imperfect. Like when I started, I was so scared of doing things wrong or not getting things right or mucking up some of the calculations. But I think as long as you've got a direction and you're trying things, that's the biggest thing. So even if it's something really simple that like members can do, but just finding something and testing it and trying it and then trying to learn from it.
Thank you. I think, just getting started's the most important thing. And Sarah?
Step.
I think it's that message of just have a go, have a play. If you're not measuring it, how do you know the answers? And remember the multi-level benefits, I think. So it's about contributing to this big data set. It's about increasing your knowledge, but we have just found so many benefits, as well as sort of increasing our authority. We get a lot of information that we can then publish online, and then also passing on that pride to our clients and knowledge as well. They're seeing it as that extra value add in their service, and then they have the language to talk about how proud they are and how their house is achieving in a different way as well.
Yeah, and that's gonna reshape what good looks like, which is amazing. So I am now going to, and one thing I might just point out is is I think, you know, there's been a lot of people do a lot of work on this challenge, and I would particularly like to thank Dr. Mel Dodson and Rob Henry, who have been absolutely driving forces behind the challenge, and also Ruth Nordstrom on staff, who's been absolutely incredible, the chairs of NCASC committee, Stefan Preyas and Caroline Pidcock. There's been so many people behind the challenge, and so thank you very much. Rob Henry, I am going to pass over to you in a second. Rob is an award-winning architect who specialises in sustainable residential of all scales. He's a tireless institute volunteer and sometimes employee, and and part of the challenge volunteer leadership team. And Rob, you've got a brief recap of the challenge for us. I note that there's also a couple of questions in the chat talking about the difference between Nat Herzl Basics and what or Passive House. My understanding is that we're able to use a series of different ways of rating the houses as part of the challenge. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So if you've got a Nat Hers, it's a pretty simple thing to just select that, and then also add that to the checklist information sheet as well. So yeah, there's a few ways to do it. I'm kind of stepping in here for Kevin, who's the registrar for this competition, or challenge, sorry. Yeah, any further questions like that we'll address in our FAQs going forward. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's I guess my job now to do a bit of a recap. And initially, I just want to show my appreciation for everyone that's joined in today, including all the participants that are going to hopefully start modelling. That's what this whole challenge is about. It's been a 5-year journey for me and Mel, so it's kind of really awesome that it's now sort of reached this phase of the national competition. So in terms of a recap, what we want you to do is we want you to start modelling. And so the easiest way to do that is to either go to our website, which is lowcarbonhousing.com.au, or go directly to the Rapid LCA website, which is rapidlca.app. As mentioned earlier by Mel, and also in the video that I did, there's plenty of useful information on our website that has FAQs, some guides and tutorial videos, including the one that you saw today. So definitely go and have a look at that. After you have done your modelling, we might just go to the next slide. And before you actually hit enter, there are a couple of little things that we need you to do. One is a poster. And so this poster, we've already set up a template for you. You literally have to just download that, add a couple of images, a little bit of text about the project, including the name of it, and then add in the carbon percentage reduction that you've achieved through the challenge. And so, yeah, we need you to upload that. And alongside the poster, there's a quick checklist to fill in, and that information is used for us just to validate the entry. When you've got those two things prepared, you can then submit this information, as I showed in the tutorial, on the Rapid LCA app and hit enter. If we next slide, please. Sorry, next slide after that one. We'll be doing, as has been mentioned before, a series of advocacy items for this. We're going to collect a whole bunch of really amazing data, I'm hopeful, from the challenge entries. And so we've been working with the Institute to include our research as an exhibition, and hopefully some speaker events at the 2026 National Architecture Conference. So that's pretty amazing. And it's also pretty amazing for you who are entering, because we will be using those posters that we're creating as part of that exhibition. So you'll be there at the national platform. We'll also be doing other things like, as Adam will be doing, is hitting people over the head with the data, going to government, really advocating, on behalf of, this challenge as well as the Institute going forward. We're hoping to do things like a roadshow of the exhibition or a mini exhibition, which we might be able to infiltrate into government buildings, which is something we did successfully in the ACT competitions previously. So why are you doing this competition? Well, you're doing it because you're here to learn, but you're also here to be part of the advocacy. And really, it's amazing exposure for you, to have your name up there, with all of the others that are doing really great things in terms of carbon modelling. So I think that's probably the next slide. As you'll see on the slide here, you've been introduced to Mel and myself, Kevin Miller, who's there as well. As I mentioned before, he was unfortunately unable to attend today's launch, but he will be there to answer all of your questions as the registrar. So please, submit anything through, and so Kevin's dealing all of that admin stuff, which is amazing. I get to do the fun stuff of exhibition design, and so on the website, by the way, there's a tab called About. So it's useful to go into that tab. That's where the LCA modelling information is, and the rules booklet. So if you have any sort of questions about the what you're meant to be doing in terms of the challenge, it should be found there. There was a question raised in the chat line of what can be entered into this challenge. It can be projects in design on the drafting board per se. We will need to have some form of energy rating for that, though, so it needs to be to a certain level. And of course, any projects that have been completed recently, particularly those ones that are going to be entered into the awards program. Here you can see there's a few dates. What we've tried to do is align this challenge with the Institute's Architecture Awards submissions, as mentioned before. So you'll be able to put your challenge report directly into the awards Sustainability Award entry submission information, and that's all been set up now. And so the awards are typically, you've got to enter those January, February periods. So we would encourage you to start modelling now to be able to do that. But please check the awards entries for your individual state and territories for that. Our particular challenge will close in March, and then from there we will be doing all of the data collection, exhibition design and things like that going forward. So it will be for you finishing in March, for us finishing towards the end of the year. So just the next slide, thanks. And so I guess this draws the Zero Carbon Housing Challenge to a close. And again, I just want to do a big shout out to the speakers today, Adam, Jane, Sarah, and Patrick, for being involved in this and assisting us. An even bigger thank you to Ruth at the Institute, who's been just an extraordinary support for Mel and me and Kevin as we've pushed this through. So thank you so much, Ruth. Of course, the entire Cerclos team who have worked tirelessly to take our little Canberra challenge and turn it into a big national challenge. And there's been so much time from them. So thank you to them. And I guess a final congratulations, it's a little bit of a pat on the back, but to our leadership team, which is Mel and Kevin and me, but also we've got a bunch of supporters that have been assisting us along the way as well. So thank you to them. this is a passion project for us. We all have day jobs, so it's pretty amazing that we've been able to turn this into that national project. And of course, to everyone here, thank you for joining in today. And for those people that might then go and see this video in the future, thank you for also tuning in. And I think that's time to say, let the modelling begin.